Hi. So the other day I posted pictures of biscuits that I made, and people asked me to show a video of how I made the biscuits. And so that's what I'm doing. So first of all, before you start anything, you put wax paper on your work surface with masking tape. And this is my exclusive kitchen masking tape. It doesn't go anywhere but the kitchen, and this is what I use, and that's what's on my table right here. So we have that. And I'm using gloves because these are gonna go to the police department after I'm done. And so here we go. two cups of white lily flour. Here we go. This is what I always use. You can use any flour you want to. I always use self-rising because it prevents you from having to use baking soda, baking powder, salt, blah, blah, blah. That's a pain. So I don't do that. Frozen butter. Frozen butter. You take your frozen butter, and I know it sounds ridiculous, but the reason you want it frozen is because it will melt as you cook it. Now, the recipe calls 2 for 1. My great-grandmother's recipe was 2 for 1. 2 cups of flour, 4 tablespoons of butter, 1 cup of milk. That's what I use to start with because she was 88 years old when she started the recipe, giving it to us, and she never had a recipe. She just made crap up, and I'm just saying that. So what we do is we do 2 for 1 to start with, and we just feel our way through it. And like I said, the gloves are because I'm going to take this to the police department. But I grate frozen butter just like this on a cheese grater in a bowl. And I grate half a stick because that's 4 tablespoons. If you don't, like I said, if you don't have buttermilk, a tablespoon of lemon juice and regular milk will make you some buttermilk, but you can use regular milk. It just won't taste the same. So I'm taking this frozen thing of butter and grating it. I do slightly more than half because I like a buttery biscuit. It's salted sweet cream, and I like that because it's salted, and just to me it tastes better. So it looks like this when you grate it because it's frozen.
Never melt the butter.
There's always room for butter, and there'll be butter later on because if you're gonna eat a biscuit, then you're gonna like some butter. I'm just here to tell you. And Julia is my camera person right now. So,
Hi.
yeah, there she is. So what we do is you just take the butter and you kind of crumble it in here. You don't want to over handle it, I guess is what you would call it. Because if you over handle it, then you're gonna have bricks for biscuits, and nobody wants that. So we finish this. That's basically what you want it to look like crumbly sand. And yes, we're gonna add probably more flour. Like I said, Mama Wheelis didn't have a real recipe. When she was cooking, she would say, doodle a hole. And she had this huge pot of flour. And I remember in her house in Clay County, she had this huge pot of flour. I mean, it was like this big around. And she would just take the pot, stir it around, make a hole, and say, doodle a hole. And I'm like, what does doodle a hole mean? And she's like, well, doodle a hole. And I said, I don't even know what that means. And she said, let me take you outside. So she took me outside, and she showed me a hole in the ground. And it was like a hole. And it was like what a roly-poly would make, I guess. And see, this isn't look, let me show you this. Julia, come here. This isn't crumbly enough for me. So I'm gonna add some more butter. because it needs to be more like pebbly sand, I guess, on the edge of the water. Like that. That's what it needs to look like. She would say, doodle a hole. And I'd say, okay. And she told me about doodle bugs. And she said, I had this big whole pot thing here. And she would do this with her pot of flour. And she would just pour the buttermilk in it. And it was like a huge pot of flour. And I'm like, what are you doing? Because you're ruining all your flour. But no, she would only use what was on the edges. So it was okay. So I'm using buttermilk, like I said. But you can use white milk or sweet milk, as they call it. And put some lemon juice in it if you want. You can put, or you can just use white milk. Doesn't matter. You can use shortening and not butter. Doesn't matter. It all makes a biscuit. So what I'm doing right now is I'm mixing this up. And like I said, 2 for 1. 2 cups of flour, 4 tablespoons of butter or shortening, 1 cup of milk. And it's probably never gonna work because I've never made it work. But I make really good biscuits. So if it looks like this, you need more milk. So here's what we do. We just take it, and what you want it to feel like, and this is gross, but if you chew a piece of gum and you take it out of your mouth and you put it on your hand and it's sticky, that's what you want it to feel like. You want it to feel and sound and look like this. This is good biscuit dough right here. That is perfect biscuit dough. Because what you're gonna do, like I said, 2 for 1 doesn't always, it's not a good recipe. But it's your start. You start with this, and then you add. So Julia's gonna help me. We're gonna put some flour in here. We got flour in here. Alright, so what we do is we take our little spatula, rubber spatula, we put it in there, and then we take just a handful. You just don't want the top to be sticky, 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 because you're about to do the unthinkable. You just don't want the top to be sticky, and you don't want your spatula to be sticky because you're about to do what I'm doing right now, and that is rubbing the sides to get it all out, and it's still sticky. That's okay. It is completely okay if you feel like you've screwed up, because I screw up in the kitchen all the time. But if you're cooking for your family members, you really can't screw up. So we're taking this away, taking that away, and we're gonna tomp this thing out. Just like that. And don't waste any of this. Don't waste it. You want all of that. And so here's the next thing we're gonna do. So we're done with that. You take another little handful, because this is all gonna be sticky. Because, like I said, her recipe is just ridiculous. Take another handful and you pat it, because you don't want a sticky spot. And if you see how this is kind of loose and gooey? You don't want that. The woman never measured anything in her life. I loved her, but she didn't. So if it's gooey like this and loose, that's not good. That's not gonna let you cut a good biscuit. So we're gonna do this, and we're kind of gonna work the dough
Not too much.
to meet our folds that we want. Because one thing about, you see that sticky? That's not good. That means we don't have enough flour. So we're gonna add some more flour. Julia knows. Julia's laughing because she knows that's not enough flour. So what we do is we fold the dough over and over, just like this. And we make it flat. And if it starts sticking, that's not enough flour. We rub our hands. I have gloves on because these are going to the police department. And I'm trying to be socially conscious or whatever. But you fold your flour, and if you feel it sticking, then you need more. So here we go. It's sticky. It's hard to do with gloves on. Here to tell you. See, it's sticking, and this is why. This is exactly why I said you want wax paper down, because this is gross and nobody wants to clean that up off of their counter. So the more folds you get, even if they're not uniform, even if they're not perfect, the more folds you get, the more layers you get in your biscuit, and the higher it'll rise. And even if the sides don't look perfect, guess what? They're still gonna taste good. I started just using my flour packet and not putting it in a bowl, but my husband said, you need to put it in a bowl, so you can be socially conscious. I told him hungry police officers wouldn't care. They'd eat a homemade biscuit 10 times a day. All right, so normally when I make 2 for 1 and do just like I did just now, I do 2 for 1 and I use this to cut. And you can see how big it is. But because I want the biscuits to go farther, because of the police officers, I'm going to use this one. And what you need to do before you've even started, and I know I should have said this to begin with, was preheat the oven to 450 degrees and use a cast iron skillet like this. And it's okay that I have flour in there. It really is. It actually helps. But use a cast iron skillet. If you don't have a cast iron skillet, you can use a pan like this. And that's perfectly okay. But I prefer a cast iron skillet. So, what I'm doing is I'm just cutting them out, and I'm doing it as close to the edge as I can, because you get more out that way. And they're gonna feel a little gooey in the middle if you have them really, really buttery like I do right now. But that's okay. It's really okay, because they're not gonna stick to your hands. And when you're placing them in the skillet, you place them as close to each other as possible. You want them to touch, because when they touch, the heat connects them and makes them rise more. Again, you're gonna thank me for the wax paper, I promise you. And you're not also you're not, yes, Julia just said, you're not scratching your table. Also, you're not scratching your counter or your table. So you just place them around like this. I know that one's got a little.
It's okay.
Little friend behind him.
It's okay. It'll always be okay.
Biscuits, you can't mess up cutting a biscuit. You just can't. Because who doesn't love a homemade biscuit?
And the scrappier they look, the more homemade they feel.
And I challenge you to find a real homemade biscuit anywhere in this town right now. So we're just cutting them out. And we're gonna put them in here. We may run out of room. How did I do that?
Didn't do it last time.
I know. We made another pan, and I'll show y'all in a second. But I don't know.
You squished them together more.
We're gonna squish them together more now. So then, what you do? You have scraps.
A whole lot of scraps.
Always, you have scraps. So you just take them and you fold them over and make you some more layers. You don't need that many. You just flatten them out. Oh, we're in trouble. I'm going to squish.
Yeah, poor biscuit. Now you got the one one-sided biscuit.
He's okay.
He's gonna survive.
Yes, we can squish them together. Like I said, the important thing is if they touch each other's sides, they rise more. And that looks like a good spot. See what I did? It doesn't matter if they're pretty because they eat the same.
They really do. They taste way better. If they look bad though, I don't know why.
So then...
Like you just got more butter, I guess.
We got 2 more. I don't know how we did this because we just made a pan. We did. And we used less flour. And then this is the mama biscuit. Mama makes the biscuits. Mama gets the tester. I don't care how many pans of biscuits you have ever had or will eat in your whole life. There is always one, or should be, in a homemade pan of biscuits that looks goofy. And it will look goofy. And you know why? Because that's Mama's biscuit. It's the tester. It's the last of the scraps.
And it's the biggest.
And it's the biggest. And that is okay. So then we take off everything we have on. And we put these things in the oven. And what I'm going to tell you right now, the most important thing, this is what, even if they're not pretty, they're going to eat the same. But what you need to do, once they've been in there, these little ones, once they've been in there about 5 minutes, you need to put some butter on them.
You always
put butter on them, because if you don't, you're going to have white biscuits. They're not going to be pretty. They're going to be white, and they're not going to be crispy on top. So we're going to put these in the oven.
And they're not going to be golden brown.
450 degrees for about 15 minutes. And then this is what we have.
When you butter them, you take them out, and this is what they look like.
These are our biscuits when they're done. So there you go. If you have any questions, please message me, call me. It's fine. Email me. I don't care.